We have officially reached plot point 7 in the 27 plot point outline series where we go over each specific plot point together. Today is about plot point 7. The protagonist's life changes as a result of the action they took and creates pressure and stress. Now, this one also begins section 3 of Act 1. Okay, section 3, Act 1 is the protagonist's life changes direction. So they took action in plot point 5. There was an immediate reaction to that in 6, and now we are dealing with the consequences of the disruption of their life and them trying to make some sort of change. Okay. But, Thomas, what is plot point 7? Well, at this point, the protagonist's world is no longer the same as it was in the ordinary world. The decisions they made earlier, the one that pushed them forward, has consequences that ripple through their life. They are experiencing these consequences for the first time, and it's creating a level of stress that brings their vulnerability and humanity to the forefront. But more importantly, it doesn't mean that a ship came down, shot their house, blew up their house, and now they're in the woods and they're dealing with the stress of that life. No, it could be it could be emotional, it could be small. All right, little moments can have big impacts on normal people's lives. When you're thinking of the life being changed as a result of the action they took and the pressure, it literally could be any action that they took. Like for example, if we look at the first 6 plot points, right? The ordinary world, somebody has a job as an accountant, and they set up that they deserve a raise and a promotion, and it's part of their thing. So the inciting incident is that they go in and they say, "Hey, listen, I want that promotion," right? And either they get it or they don't get it. Let's say they get it. All right. If they get it, then plot point 3 is that they have to react to it. So now they have to change their. All right, you got to come in later now. Now instead of coming in at 9 a.m., you're night shift, so you got to come in at 5. And like, all right, so that's something they have to adjust to. They come in, they're learning the new rules, etc., etc. All right. Now the protagonist has to deal with this, right? Number 4, plot point 4 is the protagonist reacts to and reflects on the long-term impacts. So they're sitting there and they go, "What does this lead to? Where can I go?" And these are just small moments. They aren't huge changes. Um, but they also see that there's a learning curve to this new position in their job. And they're like, "Well, as an accountant, now I have people under me, then I have to be the boss. So I have to learn how to figure out who each person is." So they decide to take action in plot point 5, where they actually go, "All right, I'm going to get to know these people. I'm going to get to figure out who they are." All right. Plot point 6, the immediate consequences of the action. Let's say they do that, but there was somebody in their office that's under them that was supposed to get the promotion and they didn't. So now they are giving pushback against them trying to be nice. And that creates plot point 7. The protagonist's life changes as a result of the action they took, creating the pressure. So the pressure that's created in this moment is now they realize they have somebody they have to deal with. So it doesn't have to be life altering, world ending. This is only Act 1. We're still setting up the real world, but it can be small little things like that. It could just be a relationship being defined in a sense where you realize, oh, we're going to have to challenge against this. Okay. The life change as a result could also be maybe in a romance. Now they're together in a relationship and they're getting to know one another, and they realize that maybe along came Polly. You see Ben Stiller. He's like sort of the safety person. He has the insurance guy. He's like, the risks are. And then Polly is sort of like, who cares? Let's just try something. So that is the pressure and change that they're dealing with in that moment. Anyway, 3 elements that you should be aware of. You do want to allow this plot point to highlight the protagonist's vulnerability. You want it to reveal the human side, the emotional side, the truth. You want to create the pressure and stress and the sense of being overwhelmed, or allowing the information, the new information or the new scenario, to be critical to their development. How are they choosing to interact with this moment? How are they choosing to behave? How are they choosing to react? Okay. And that could be anything from self doubt to emotional strain. Maybe it's a physical challenge of trying to keep up, right? They finally got into the army. They went through the boot camp, and they were like, "This is easy," and all that. You know what? This is all still part of the easy part of Act One. Plot point 7 comes up. They get okay to be a part of the Navy SEALs, and now they realize this is very difficult. That's a physical challenge, right? It's also mental and emotional, but it's all about reminding um, the reader who the protagonist is through their choices. It's always choices. Remember, characters are always choices. The second thing you want to do when it comes to the elements is create both internal and external pressure. For a rich dynamic scene, you want balance where it influences internal, like emotional, psychological turmoil, etc., with the external pressure from the environment, antagonists, circumstances. In the example with the accountant, okay, the accountant was like, I took action to I'm now the boss, but I need to get to know the people. And now plot point 7 is that they get to know each other, but they realize that one of these people was passed over and they got the position only because they asked. They were proactive. So in this situation, the physical would be the environment, or I should say the external would be the environment where this person is making it difficult for them to be the boss and do their job, where the internal is what they're dealing with that pushback, how it is affecting them. Okay. You also want to show the consequences of that. So the core of this plot point is showing how the protagonist's life has indeed changed due to the action they did take in plot point 5. Now remember, section 2 is plot point 4, 5, and 6. 4 is they react and reflect on the long-term impacts of the inciting incident. 5 is they take action to ultimately fix or at least attempt to fix whatever happened with the inciting incident. Or more importantly, they're adjusting. They're choosing to adjust their life to the impact of the inciting incident. 6 is the immediate reaction or consequence to taking action. And then 7 is them within that new world of having taken action. Okay. And that's why in this example with the accountant, they are the boss. They are trying to get to know people. And then they learn that, oh, okay, this person got passed over and they're going to give me some pushback. Okay. Because the truth is, their situation should be different now. And it is the beginning, or it is beginning to affect their mindset, emotions, and outlook. Their equilibrium has been thrown off balance. The ordinary world, they know everything. They know who they are. They know what they're doing. They have a mission, right? Whatever their purpose is in life. And now it's being challenged. There's pushback against it. And the protagonist is starting to experience these complications that might make them question if they made the right decision in taking action. All right. Here's some 3 quick tips for plot point 7. You want to deepen emotional complexity. Use this moment to add layers to your character's internal conflict. Pressure can bring out unexpected qualities, good or bad, and these moments of struggle are where your protagonist truly starts to change. Remember, the more you challenge a protagonist, the more you get to see their behavior. So if you challenge their positions, we get to see if they're willing to change, if they're malleable, what positions they care about more or less. What position is, I like the Giants, right? They don't have to say I like the Giants, but they have to show that they like the Giants. They have to be getting ready for a game that's coming up, or they have Giants stuff all over their wall, or they're wearing a Giants jersey. They're Giants fans. We get it. We showed. But you might want to challenge that, saying that the Giants aren't the best team because, the Miami Dolphins are the only team in history to ever go undefeated and win the Super Bowl in 72-73 season, right? So that challenges the idea that maybe the Giants aren't the greatest team ever. Right? So that is how you challenge positions, but you also want to challenge their choices. Okay. In the situation with the accountant, they were like, hey, I'm going to be a boss. All right. This is a little bit different than what I'm used to. So I actually have to, maybe if I get to know these people, it'll be easier. So they take the action, and now we're pushing back on that choice. Hi, my name is Thomas. Nice to meet you. I want to get to know you. Yeah, you want to get to know me? You're the person that took the job that I was supposed to get. No. Now we're pushing back on the scenario, and it puts them into a place where they have to react. And how they react is character development. You want to show the cracks forming. They don't necessarily have to burst open, but you want to see that they are dealing with something. And that stress often exposes weaknesses. And this plot point 7, is a place where your protagonist may falter. Showing cracks forming in their resolve is vital to making them relatable and three-dimensional. Because remember, perfect characters aren't interesting. And I'll repeat it again. You want to balance external and internal, right? So you want to make sure that the pressure isn't just internal or isn't just external, because the internal is their emotional reaction to the external. Okay. And if you have both those sides, we get to experience the challenge with the character. Now, let's talk about Star Wars real quick. Okay. Now, again, if we look at Star Wars and we break down the first 6 plot points, the ordinary world is Darth Vader and the princess. Luke is on the desert planet. There's these droids and the plants. They got to get to Obi-Wan. We have literally set the world up and the rules, and Darth Vader is like, we must find them, right? The inciting incident is Luke buying the droids. If Luke doesn't buy the droids, there is no story. Why? Because he won't see the message from Leia. Now, because he bought the droids, he was told to clean the droids. But ultimately, he has to go clean the droids, right? So, plot point 3, right? This is the protagonist reacts to the inciting incident, and as you can see, it's when the Princess Leia message about Obi-Wan comes up. So they got the droids, they're told to clean it in the inciting incident, and like, oh, so then they're cleaning the droids, and poof, help me, Obi-Wan, you're my only hope, right? Obi-Wan, he starts thinking about it, blah 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 blah. We get a little bit of exposition. The droids are talking to him. Luke ends up taking the device off of R2D2, and now R2D2 is like, the only person that's allowed to listen to this message is Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? Which brings us to plot point 4, which is the protagonist reacts and reflects on the long-term impact. And in this case, this is when Luke talks to his aunt and uncle about the message, and they're like, I don't know. I would just take the droids to get their memory wiped, and then that'll be the end of it. Right? And Luke is like, yeah, but I think Obi-Wan might be old Ben Kenobi. Obi-Wan Kenobi might be old Ben Kenobi. Right? And the uncle's like, that old nut. Right? And then so Luke gets dismissed, and he's like, oh, I kind of want to join the academy. And the uncle's like, no, you stay on for one more harvest, and then you could go. And then we get that last line, like, he's more like his father than you think. And then Uncle Owen's like, yeah, that's what worries me, alluding to even though it wasn't in the script originally, Darth Vader was, spoiler alert, the father, but it was hinting at something like that, right? So the react and reflects is Luke has aspirations beyond his ordinary world. I want to be a pilot. He has aspirations or motivations to figure out what the deal is with the princess, right? But everyone's like, no. Anyway, but he's not taking action yet. It's just conversation. It's thought. We're learning what drives him beyond this ordinary world. Now, plot point 5, the protagonist takes action. This is the interesting part. R2D2 and C3PO, they are technically the POV at the beginning of the movie, right? Because that's what Luke was like. George Lucas was like, I'm gonna make the droids the POVs. Anyway, R2D2 ends up leaving, and Luke goes into the droid bunker or whatever, and C3PO is like, no, please don't deactivate me. R2D2 left. Oh, okay. So Luke decides to go get him. He's like, we can't tonight, but we'll go get him in the morning. So they head off to get R2D2, who is heading off to find Obi-Wan Kenobi. Which brings us to the immediate consequences of R2D2 and Luke taking the action. R2D2 is going into the desert, and Luke is going after R2D2, and that leads us to number 6. The Tusken Raiders, Sand People, attack Luke, right? And they knock him out, throw him onto the ground. They're going through his stuff. Well, they're going through their stuff. Plot point 7 happens. Obi-Wan saves Luke. Hello there. Luke tells Obi-Wan that the droid has a message for him. So that is the pressure. Creates pressure and stress. A couple things happen here. The life changes. Obi-Wan, maybe that Obi-Wan is dead. And, and Obi-Wan is like, I hope not, because Obi-Wan is me. I have not heard that name in a long time, right? And the pressure is that the Tusken Raiders are also potentially going to gather their forces and come meet them. But there's also a potential thing. He's like, I don't remember ever owning a droid. But ultimately, they're like, all right, let's go. So it turns out Obi-Wan Kenobi is old Ben Kenobi. It's adding pressure in the sense that the world is expanding. What we once knew is now something different, because one of the positions that Luke creates is old Ben is not Obi-Wan Kenobi, because he says maybe Obi-Wan Kenobi died. These are Obi-Wan Kenobi's droid. They're claims, right? Which creates positions. That position is challenged, and Obi-Wan is like, no, I'm Obi-Wan. Old Ben Kenobi. I'm Obi-Wan. And Luke changes his position completely, because he's like, oh, all right, let's see what the deal is. Anyway, so when you approach plot point 7, let's just do final thoughts here. When you approach plot point 7, all right, again, sometimes it doesn't have to be a full-on conversation. Sometimes it doesn't have to be they're running from aliens. It could just be something where it presents the truth and elevates the stakes. In Star Wars, the stakes are elevated, where it's like, this message now has the potential to be responded to by Obi-Wan officially being alive, and he could look at the message because the message is only for Obi-Wan. Therefore, the potential to save the princess. Right? Luke was told to stay away from Obi-Wan, but he actually went to Obi-Wan instead of staying away from him. Right? He didn't do as his uncle asked and have the droid's memory wiped. So now he's learning more information, thrusting him further into a new world. Even though we haven't hit Act 2 yet, we're still being thrust into a new world. Okay? So everything is being elevated. The stakes are being elevated. The pressure being elevated. The consequences to those choices. Right? Because Section 3 is the protagonist's life changes direction. We see Luke in this plot point 7. Okay? Remember, Section 3 is plot point 7, 8, and 9. Okay? It's the last section of Act 1. We are setting up the literal movement of Luke's life in this moment. He has met the real Obi-Wan, who he thought was just old Ben Kenobi, but he wasn't really looking for old Ben at this moment. He was just looking for the droid. But that action is now pushing him towards the princess and pushing him towards that life and pushing him towards what you'll eventually get the conversation with. Oh, yes, your father, Jedi, like your father before me. That reminds me. Let me give you your lightsaber. Right? That's coming in plot point 8, where that's the plot twist. That this is whole world, right? But we haven't gotten there. We'll talk about that in the next video. But I want to say, use plot point 7 as an opportunity to think outside the box. We always talk about that. Always think outside the box. You're allowed to try things. Just because an idea is there doesn't mean you can't attempt things. Because remember, until you release it, you have the freedom to keep changing your novel, keep changing your story. I would even say after you release it, because there have been many a book, especially books like The Hobbit, that have been republished with revisions, whole scenes, whole tones, whole themes. All right. But you want to think about how you can push the pressure of your protagonist that might not always be obvious. And remember, it can be subtle. It could creep in small little cracks show itself, reveal itself. Don't be afraid to push your characters into uncomfortable territory. It's okay to challenge your characters. If they go, I want to be a football player, break their leg. I want to be a football player. Don't let them make the first cut. I want to be a football player. You know, their traffic jam, everything leading to the first practice, the first tryouts, they're late, right? Whatever the case may be, push them because then they have to find solutions. All right. Also, if they break their leg, that'll push them into a new world, right? Anyway, the one thing that you can do is practice writing out broad statements or ideas that would ultimately be plot point 7. Because remember, when we work on the 27 plot point outline, at first we sort of just go through and just add these blank long statements, these summaries of what should technically go there without going into deep chapter writing. Like instead of writing 3,000 words, whatever, 10 pages of a chapter, you just sit there and it's just this broad statement, and then you could kind of like beat on that. You could write little things. Like if I was writing the Star Trek thing, it would just be well, I wouldn't write that. Let's do number 6. Tusken Raiders, Sand People attack Luke. That's all it would be, right? Because that's just the plot. That's what needs to happen. The story is what you get to write out in the novel, in the chapters, on the page. How they do it, like that's you write that out. You experience that. Luke trying to protect himself, but he ultimately gets beaten. All that is on the page. But the plot that you would write in the beat, in this example, plot point 6, is just Tusken Raiders, Sand People attack Luke. That's it. Okay. Additionally, take the time to figure out what the core values of this plot point truly are, what are the consequences, and what would add real pressure to the character's life. Ultimately, you have to keep practicing. You got to keep experimenting, and you got to keep pushing yourself. I would recommend whenever you come up to a plot point and you give your character a situation where the plot point must happen no matter what. And like, for example, let's say they have to meet the princess, right? That's the plot point. They have to meet the princess. So think about what are three different variations of meeting the princess. Does it go well? That's one way. Does it go bad? That's another. Uh, do they not even get to meet the princess? That's another. And then you can continue to do that. You can go, all right, let's see. A good way would be that they really kick it off. They both instantly have great chemistry. The second way is there's chemistry there, but it goes bad because she can sense that you have a desire, you want something from her, and she's not going to give it to you. The third one is the guards don't even. Who are you? You can't go to see the princess, and then you can keep doing it. If you feel more comfortable, just keep trying. What's a fourth way that could happen? They break their leg. The fifth, but you keep going. The fifth way is maybe the character themselves doesn't feel comfortable going. They don't have the confidence in themselves, right? So you can, once you know what has to happen, the protagonist must meet the princess. How do you challenge that meeting? Yes, they're going to. Let's say we go with the character's nervous and can't do it, right? We know they're going to meet them because that's the plot. But the story is they don't have the confidence. So maybe it's a father-son talk. Maybe it's a mother-son talk. Maybe it's not a princess. It's a princess meeting another princess. And again, the father-daughter talk, mother-daughter talk. Maybe they go there to have the conversation, but then they back out. And as they're walking away, they run into the princess, sort of like mundanely hanging out in the garden. And now it's an informal meeting. So they still meet, but this is why it works, because now they feel comfortable because they weren't dealing with all the spectacle. And that's how you look at plot points. You go, what has to happen? Luke buys the droids, right? Luke has to get the droids. It's less that Luke buys the droids, more that Luke obtains the droids. So what are different ways that he could do that? The first is he buys it, right? The second is he finds them. The third is Um, they crash into his farm, because the thing comes down, the shuttle comes down. Woo! So instead of the shuttle happening to fall in the desert by the dragon thing, the dragon bones, it falls and crashes into the farm. So there are so many different ways that Luke gets the droids, and you could just play with that until you find what works with you. All right, with that said, next video in the series, we're going to talk about plot point 8, the first plot point, the first plot twist or pinch that happens. We'll talk about what the values of that is. Question. Yes. Let me know in the comments below how you think your characters would react to the pressure. If you're uncomfortable talking about your stories, why don't you ask me a question about plot point 7 and your thoughts on what you think it is and how you feel you can use it. And we'll have a nice dialogue. We'll create a conversation. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out. And as always, you got to keep developing the right mindset. I'll see you next time. Bye.